My reading presentation will be on Lovely Hula Hands, Corporate Tourism and the Prostitution of Hawaiian Culture, which was written by Haunani Trask, who is pictured here. She is a descendant of the Pi'ilani line of Maui, as well as a descendant of the Kauai line, Kahaku Makaliwa. Anake Haunani Trask was born on October 3rd, 1949, and in the words of my political science kumu, Sydney Lehua Iaukea, she is a kupuna to us all. She is an activist, indigenous leader, human rights advocate, author, poet, Hawaiian nationalist, and retired professor. She is also the recipient of the Angela Davis Prize, which she received in 2019 from the American Studies Association. However, she was unable to physically be there, so her longtime partner, David E. Stannard, who is also a professor at UH Manoa, he teaches American Studies, he received it for her. She studied at the University of Wisconsin during the 60s, taught at the University of Hawaii at Manoa. She also became the founding director of the University of Hawaii Center for Hawaiian Studies, as well as a founding member of Kalahui Hawaii. Some of her works include From a Native Daughter, Colonialism and Sovereignty in Hawaii, my personal favorite, which is where I first read her essay, Lovely Hula Hands, several years ago. She co-wrote and co-produced Act of War, The Overthrow of the Hawaiian Kingdom, and she also has a compilation of poems within her book, Light in the Crevice Never Seen. She is without a doubt a hero of mine, but sadly, I have never had the privilege nor the opportunity of meeting her. So this is just a picture of my book. It's actually my second copy of Anakea Honani's book. I gifted my first copy to my niece a few years ago with the hope that she would pass on this ike to her friends, which I'm very grateful for because she did. And within this puke, you'll find many essays written by Auntie Haunani, including Lovely Hula Hands. It is definitely a book worth having and reading, so pick one up if you don't have one. In the very beginning of this eloquently written essay, Trask offers her readers the romanticized, eroticized, and feminized image of Hawaii, one that tourists the world over take pleasure in exploiting and mocking. It is one that has been constructed and fabricated to entice visitors to act upon their every fantasy while simultaneously taking part in the degradation of our culture and people, specifically our women and our aina, papahanau moku. Because, as Auntie Haunani puts it, above all, Hawaii is she, the image of the native female in her magical allure. This is Wai'anae, my home. I took these pictures to emphasize Haunani's point that to Hawaiians, daily life is neither soft nor kind. In fact, it is quite the opposite. I grew up in poverty. My ohana has lived in the moku of Wai'anae for generations. My great-great-grandmother, Kauaipio Lii-Namuliwai, was born here and is buried on the grounds of Wai'anae Protestant Church up on Mill Street. My tutukane, or grandfather, was literally born on Puea soil, which is located up Wai'anae Valley, up what is now known as Old Government Road. Wai'anae is the 5th largest impoverished community in the fake state of Hawaii, as determined by a 2017 census assessment. And according to the 2010 United States Census, Wai'anae is home to the largest population of Native Hawaiians in the world. And in her book, Auntie Haunani talks about the economic and cultural devastations we Kanako Iwi face because of displacement, dispossession, and cultural prostitution. Here, it should come as no surprise then that our identities and bodies have been commodified. Our women are sexualized, debased, bought and sold to the consumer by multinational corporations that control the entire industry, from airlines to hotels, bus transportation to entertainment. We are mere prostitutes and products and haven't realized our own complicity in our own degradation. In fact, Haunani underscores the institutionalized processes that play a major role in creating, disseminating, and maintaining that eroticized image of our ancestral home and Navaine Oiwi, our indigenous women. Like the relationship between a pimp and the product he's produced to sell to the highest bidding customer, the Hawaiian woman becomes the object of exchange to be bought, used, and ultimately discarded once the customer has had their way with them. We're told this is for our betterment, that it is beneficial and advantageous for us to support the tourist industry by learning Japanese instead of our own mother tongue, which was banned in 1896 when English became the medium of instruction in all public and private schools. The Hawaiian female is produced by educational institutions and sold by corporations who are the sole beneficiaries of our commodification, victimization, and ultimate destruction. But, as Anake Haunaniki Trask also highlights, we are born from the deepest darkness of Po, the female night who gave birth to the universe without any male impregnating element. That is a quote from Navahine Kapu, Lili Kalaka Me'elihiwa's book, which is also a book worth picking up and reading. Women were the first to be born into the time of light, according to our cosmogonic genealogies. Na'akua Wahine gave birth to our universe, our islands, our stars, and humans. So why have we been degraded to such sexual objects? Well, according to Trask, it is born out of the depths of Western sexual sickness. And from my own research on Calvinism and the dehumanization of Kanako Iwi, the first missionaries to our shores in 1820 saw our ways as lascivious and our women indolent, uncaring, heathenistic, and savage. But as Trask articulates, sex was not something to be ashamed of. Moe aku, moe mai. Sleep here, sleep there. There was also a dualism that existed within every person, as well as the world in which they lived and were born from. Gender was fluid, and each person had a ku and hina side which they flowed between freely. Wahine and Kane were complementary pairs, because they existed within all of us. And our deified ancestors often spoke of the changing gender within the mo'olelo of our akua. The social and societal constructs of the feminine and masculine were not fixed. In the words of Auntie Haunani on page 43, culturally, Hawaiians are very open and free about sexual relationships, although Christianity and organized religion have done much to damage these traditional sexual values. So that's the ending of my presentation. I hope it wasn't too boring to listen to. It wasn't that long because Anake Haunaniki Trask's essay really isn't that long, although it is very concise, well articulated, well argued. And a lot of what she wrote are things that I can personally relate to. They're things that I have experienced. This is my reality as a Native Hawaiian woman, having grown up in the 5th largest impoverished community in the fake state of Hawaii, as is aforementioned in an earlier slide. I experienced the institutionalism, having been taught to learn Japanese over my mother tongue, that it would somehow be advantageous for me to work down Waikiki, to sell myself and my culture, the degraded form of my culture, by the way, to ignorant tourists. Now, we didn't think of them as ignorant then. We thought that that was our lot in life. But we thought of it in terms of individualism, that we individually solely would benefit from selling ourselves to the tourists down Waikiki, that we would make a lot of money, that would be lucrative for us. However, what was never included into the narrative were the corporations that employed us, who are the true beneficiaries of our debasement and degradation.